Okay, I'm a bit, annoyed. I actually just finished recording my episode review for the series premiere Cherish today because I did watch it. They uploaded it on YouTube yesterday and I just watched it about 30 minutes ago. But for whatever reason, the computer decided to freeze, shut down, and when I recovered the file, it was jacked up. So thankfully, it was only about 12, 15 minutes long, so it wasn't a lot of time, but I'm a bit annoyed. So overall, Cherish today, based off a lot of people telling me how much they like the show. I did watch episode 1, Genesis. At this moment, I have not watched episode 2. What I'll do is, I'll get this review up on the channel and see what the views are like. And if a lot of people give a good feedback, then I'll watch episode 2, do a review of that, and then, be ready for episode 3, which comes on the 19th, which is this upcoming Wednesday. If I were to give it a score, I do feel kind of weird giving a series premiere score. I'd give it a solid, and don't think it's bad now, but I'll give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. And I'm not saying that because 6.5, that's awful. No, it's just like this show was pretty straightforward. It was to the point. Honestly, I didn't even take notes. All I did was write down the names of, Gently and Evan, the main characters for this particular season. It seems that every season of this show is planned to be focused on a couple, like Gently and Evan this season, and if it gets renewed for season 2 or season 3, season 4, each season will have different people. But I do feel like in terms of my review, I feel like this is going to be more of a first impressions video, because when I think about it, what happens in this episode, the first 2 to 3 minutes is Gently and Evan having sex with different partners, and I'm thinking to myself, yep, it's going to be one of those shows, huh? But we get a glimpse into the day in the life of Evan and Gently until they eventually meet up at the library. And after that, Evan's thinking about her, remembers her name, the librarian said, and looked her up on Instagram. I believe it was Instagram. Because whenever social media is integrated, whether it be social media or technology, they have to be wary as to whether or not they are able to use product placement. So I don't know if it was Instagram as we know it or the Instagram variant of this show, because they had to pay. So sometimes they come up with wacky names, kind of like on iCarly. They say like, oh, my Pear phone or something like that. It's like it's Pear instead of Apple, just for an example. And speaking of product placement, wasn't there an advertisement for Queen Sugar on a bus or a car? I'm pretty sure I saw that. And I'm like, I ain't even mad at you. But after, they meet up at the bookstore and he hits her up on Instagram. And basically he DMs her. They meet up, have some cheesecake. Then from there, Gently kind of takes Evan to her side of the woods, meets up with her family. And then they go on a little adventure and, sitting in the back of the trunk having some, I forgot what they were eating, some kind of dessert. They asked some questions, and that's always a dangerous game. And he asked the wrong question, apparently, about parents. And then, she acts cold towards him. The fridge they were looking for wasn't the right size. And they pretty much, have a verbal argument at the end. And Evan, doesn't get in the car, which was kind of dumb given the fact that he was in a part of town very far from his, I guess you could say, place that he lives, and he has to get an Uber back to his car, and then that's the end of the episode. But overall, I think this show is one of those things where it's there for the enjoyment factor as opposed of the drama. Of course there is the drama that will keep the series going, because if Gently and Evan just get together in episode 1, how in the hell is their story going to, actually last an entire season for however many episodes it's supposed to be? But I do feel like it does give a different vibe when I was watching the episode, because of the fact that unlike a haves and a have-nots or Loving You Is Wrong or an Ambitions or an Oval, I don't have to take notes on every single freaking thing that happens. The show is just presented for us. It's just for us to kind of take in. And I actually like that aspect of it, mainly because it means a lot less work for me. I don't think this is the kind of show where I'm going to be doing a bunch of theory videos of, ooh, what's going to happen here? Or, does somebody have a ex-lover that's going to come back? No, it's just a show that is created for, the appreciation of black love. And that's not a bad thing at all. Looking at the ratings though, it got a 0.75, which I think we could actually attribute to the fact that it came on directly after the haves and have-nots. But then you also look at the fact that it was a 2-night event. So Wednesday nights will be the nights it comes on. I forgot to check what time it comes on Wednesday night, so I don't know if it comes on at 10 or at 9. But episode 2 only got a 0.26. So that's barely even a third of the series premiere. So I'm very curious to see what the ratings for episode 3 will be when it comes on the 19th, because overall I've seen positivity towards the show. I went on Twitter, I looked on Instagram in the comments, and the hashtag for it, and people really liked it. They liked the fact that you have two black people from different walks of life. Evan's definitely from the, well, if you want to use have and have not terminology, he's more of a have, where Gently is kind of a have not, but she's not embarrassed by that. She takes pride in who she is, strong, independent black woman. And I guess you could say Evan, in her mind, is just kind of throwing money at the situation, as opposed to, not seeing things for what they are. Like, for me, the one thing that kind of, I'm like, oh, maybe he shouldn't have said that, was when they were at the place to get the fridge, and he's like, well, why don't we just go to a real appliance store? We could find out, we could find a fridge with the right measurements and whatnot. I was like, no, this is a real appliance store. And to be honest, I get it from their side, or from her side of town. This is legitimately a Best Buy or a Lowe's. This is how they get what they need for, their houses, whether it be a car, whether it be a refrigerator, microwave, washer, dryer, whatever the situation, that's how they do it. And I liked Evan's body language and his uncertainty about certain things, which makes a lot of sense. You have a guy who went to school, he works in a tech company and whatnot, so then you're brought to, well, the ghetto is kind of different, as opposed to him being a bit nervous about leaving his car, or meeting Ben and the relatives, if you will, of Gently. Didn't know how to interpret kind of like, are they sizing him up, that kind of thing. And even when he gets to the cheesecake place and he's like, oh, is there a menu, or hey, is there any tables and chairs, and they're sitting on the curb. It's just those little things like that which I liked, because it really showed the differences between the two. But despite all that, there's still the chemistry between them. And when they're asking each other questions, which is always a dangerous game, whether it be 20 questions or late night conversation, somebody's going to ask the wrong thing, or just ask an innocent question, but it gets taken the wrong way by the other person, and that leads to a bit of a falling out. So that definitely caused some cracks in the foundation of what Gently and Evan had ever since they met in the bookstore. And Cicely Tyson, just a joy. It was really great to see her in this show, and the fact that she's given more to work with than what she had in A Fall from Grace. Is like, they down there, they hungry. But in any case, I did like the fact that she was providing, well, Gently with some good intel. Usually when your elders tell you stuff, then that's usually good things to take at face value and take it to heart, because they know what they're talking about. I love the fact they talked about how she was a actress in her day, but unfortunately she wasn't able to showcase her talent, but she was able to eventually pass down the talent, teaching drama and whatnot, and she's respected. So that's really good. But one thing, how I said earlier that this show definitely feels kind of real, in the sense that these conversations, these interactions between people, this kind of stuff seems like it could definitely happen in real life, which is the difference between a show like The Oval or The Haves and Have-Nots or Ambitions, where it's always about the drama, about killing, blowing things up, setting things on fire, while this show takes a very relaxed tone, and I actually like that. But if there was one thing I were to point out in terms of like, yeah, that probably wouldn't happen, is when they're in the library and Gently's trying to return Miss Luma's books in order to check out more, but then there was a fine, and then the actress, who I forget her name, but I know she was in Malcolm and Eddie, she was in The Cosby Show, I believe she was on A Different World as well. And didn't she play on The Fresh Prince or something? Didn't Jazz get married to her? I know she's memorable because of her fast talking characteristic, which is hilarious. But I'm thinking, for all those people waiting in line, it's like somebody would have said something. Like nobody would have just stood there the entire time while, Gently and the librarian are going back and forth. And then to find out the fine was over $200, I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't know how that would have went down in real life. But overall, it's just one of those things where it was funny. That's how they met up there. And yeah, he remembered the name and looked her up. And I think Miss Luma looked him over as well. And there were a lot of different lines in here that really felt. I remember when they were sitting on the curb eating the cheesecake. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cheesy. No pun intended on cheesecake. In terms of like the different dialogue that Gently was using. But then I was like, no, that's actually some pretty good stuff. Maybe it was just me being bitter over Valentine's Day, which I'm not. I'm just kidding. But I'm just like, no. When I actually listen to the lines again, I'm like, oh, they're actually talking real. I think it's because I'm so used to watching these shows where it's just drama with the one-liners and sassiness and people laying each other out. To actually hear characters talk about things with substance behind it, it felt foreign to me, but it was a good thing. So I actually liked it. And honestly, you kind of got a little bit of Evan's insight in how he does things. Like, where he talked about how, now what if we went to like a real restaurant with tables and chairs and whatnot, just to kind of get a feel on Gently. And, in terms of where she was at, the dialogue between the cheesecake as in terms of like which one to choose about making people happy and that kind of stuff, it was pretty good. And I guess Evan learned that, hey, just sitting on the curb eating a slice of cheesecake to Gently makes her as happy as sitting in a restaurant, with tables and chairs would make him happy. And yeah, I mean, when you grow up, and I don't really know Evan's upbringing, but the fact he said, making money to pay off student loans and, pay for this car and help out his family, that kind of stuff. You could just based off that line of dialogue, he most likely was one of the first or few people in his family to go to college and get a good education, to have a job where he can make decent money. That actually makes sense. So perhaps he kind of grew up in Gently's neck of the woods, so to speak, or at least in a similar kind of neighborhood. But then he was able to work his way to climb out of that, if you know what I'm saying there. So when you go back, it's kind of different. So I ain't gonna lie. I remember, in Lynchburg, to me, is a big town, but it's not compared to a lot of other people who came from like Pennsylvania or Maryland or whatnot. So I remember I felt like an outsider going back home. Not to say I hang out with people back at home, because, my thing was, in high school, I was cool, but with people, but it's like, I was always an introvert. I was never that person to go to parties and whatnot. So just like sometimes being back in the hometown, especially when I've been at college for a while, I would feel a bit out of place, so to speak. So I definitely know what Evan was feeling like during certain parts of the episode. Like and here's another thing that was definitely real, but I felt like, yeah, it is annoying. Like when you go to pick someone up, it's like, or they ask you for a ride, or you offer, but then somebody they know needs a ride as well. And it's like, man, I ain't signed up for this. So when the dude jumped in the car with the 3 bags, what was it, like the cans, like he put 2 in the trunk, then 1 in the back seat. And then I'm like, man, there's probably going to be soda stains in that dude's trunk, and they ain't going to be cheap to clean out. So that was pretty funny, but annoying though, because it definitely does happen in this day and age. But yeah, I think it was a pretty solid start to the series. I guess you could say, based off how well this video does, I will do an episode 2 review as well. But just based on the format of this episode, if it's kind of like this every time, I don't even think it's an episode, like I mentioned before, where I had to jot down like 2 pages of notes. I'll just watch the episode and pretty much give my impressions and go from there. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you watch Cherish today? Did you like it? If you haven't, the episode 1 Genesis is on the OWN YouTube channel. So episode 1 is on YouTube, is on OWN's YouTube channel. It's right there for you to watch. They uploaded it yesterday at 1 p.m. I believe. And yeah, we'll go from there. And yes, For Life, I know a lot of people have been telling me about that as well. I will do my best to try to watch and review that before episode 2 comes on. So you know the drill. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give this video a thumbs up, and follow me on social media. Links are in the description below.